All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have another incredible interview for you guys. Kozak is an he's probably the funniest guy online. He does all these impressions of everybody, especially his Tucker Carlson impressions are the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Anything. I don't want my speech to be policed, even though you are an officer. I always thought you were a political organization.
What's your thoughts on this, man? Why do you think that it's gotten this bad? Is it just terrible PR from Israel, or are people just losing their minds? What's going on here?
I think that it's a telling thing when they can't defeat your arguments, and when things I think are pretty morally clear on who the good guys are and the bad guys are in this scenario broadly. You have to make excuses, you have to find scapegoats, you have to find ways to discredit without being able to debunk the arguments that are actually being presented to you.
You were just in Israel. I was looking at some of your posts. How was that experience in Israel?
For people on the pro-Israel side, you're largely dealing with a whole lot of people who are very engaged, connected, have been to Israel, have either family there, friends there, have had real tactile experience, have been there. When you actually go there, you realize, wow, a lot of that Israel hate out there and a lot of anti-Semitic hate is noise. It's not grounded in any sort of reality. But when Trump arrives, oh my God, he gets there and kills for an hour and a half in the Knesset. Wow, I think we're doing great. We brought him home. We did a great job. Brandon, I think it's working. Officer Tatum, we're doing great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have another incredible interview for you guys. Kozak is he's probably the funniest guy online. He does all these impressions of everybody, especially his Tucker Carlson impressions are the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. But he's I would consider him a good online friend, and I wanted to get his take on a lot of stuff because not only is he funny, he's very insightful. So help me welcome to the show, Kozak.
Officer, thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah. Dude, you have to do a Tucker impression. You just something, because I just, the audience, if they have not heard you do that impression, is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
I don't know if I have to do anything. I don't want my speech to be policed, even though you are an officer. I always thought you were a political organization. I don't really understand that. Why are you wearing red? Is that a communist color? I love communism and I love capitalism, but I hate it. I was molested by a demon. I really was. I believe that. I really do. Like at all. I'm asking questions. Nothing wrong with that. Like at all. Like seriously, like at all. And there you go.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Mm-hmm.
That's the funniest thing I ever heard. But anyway, we can get to some more serious stuff. I just had to hear, literally at the office, we all die laughing at the impressions.
Thank you.
It's hilarious to me. But you have your own podcast, and so obviously you talk about a wide variety of stuff. But the biggest topic here, man, and you get the backlash like I do. You're getting paid $7,000 from whatever Hamas or so. Not Hamas, but Israel or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But obviously we're not. What's your thoughts on this, man? Why do you think that it's gotten this bad? Is it just terrible PR from Israel, or are people just losing their minds? What's going on here?
I think that it's a telling thing when they can't defeat your arguments, and when things I think are pretty morally clear on who the good guys are and the bad guys are in this scenario broadly. You have to make excuses, you have to find scapegoats, you have to find ways to discredit without being able to debunk the arguments that are actually being presented to you. So it must be that they're compromised in some way, and it must be that they're being paid off. And frankly, you know what? Like, I'm a capitalist, being paid to make content doesn't bother me, but nobody is really doing that. But in order to figure out why people are defending Israel in a way that the alternative to admitting that is to admit that you yourself have been propagandized and maybe misinformed and confused about an issue, because it seems very obvious to me the difference between, war and atrocity, the difference between terrorism and a Western army. And I think deep down in the long run, people will look back at this time the way we look back at COVID, and there were a lot of people who succumbed to groupthink and said, man, what were we thinking during that time that we just kind of succumbed to this sort of sheepish mentality? And I think they'll look back on this and say, did we really question Hamas versus Israel as to really kind of knowing who the good guys and bad guys were? And I think when you're faced with evil that's so apparent in the form of Hamas on the 7th of October, there's different reactions to it. There's different approaches. Some people can face it head on and confront it, And some people shy away from it and can't accept that such an evil would exist, that people would be possessed by such evil ideologies. So there must be something else going on. There must be this grand conspiracy behind the scenes that makes the West responsible for what's going on here and have caused it. It's where the isolationists come in and say it's a reaction to Western imperialism or mingling in these conflicts that causes people to act this way. It can't just be ideologies that exist. Everyone just wants the same thing. And therefore, people supporting Israel must be compromised. And that's the ultimate way out of having to actually confront the truth, I think.
Every choice we make is a stand for freedom, even your phone service. That's why I switched to Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. You get the same nationwide coverage, great service, and they back causes that honor faith, family, and freedom. Go to patriotmobile.com/Tatum or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Tatum for a free month of service. Make sure you switch today. That's patriotmobile.com/Tatum or call 972-PATRIOT. I think you made a really good point there, is that they're not willing to take these people at their word. I mean, they literally say they want to eliminate the Jews. They literally are barbaric. They shoot the people, their own people in the head in the middle of the street and broadcast it. I mean, at what point, what else do they have to say and or do for people to realize that we are all not the same? We're all not civilized. Like, some of these people are very barbaric. And this is stuff that they're doing publicly. Imagine what they do privately. Imagine the secretness of some of the things that they are doing to their own citizens, the things that they've done to Israeli hostages. I interviewed a hostage the other day, or a person that was released. He did 490 days. He was a hostage. All the stuff that they were telling me, how the citizens were involved and how they had him in tunnels for 400 days. I mean, just inhumane treatment. And people are just, they don't want to accept it. I mean, you were just in Israel. I was looking at some of your posts. You know, how was that experience in Israel? I mean, was it anything new that you learned, or was it kind of like par for the course of things that you already have known about being in Israel?
Well, it's interesting. Whenever you go to these places, I think one of the things that people should be aware of in this whole conversation that's gone on over the last 2 years is, for people on the pro-Israel side, you're largely dealing with a whole lot of people who are very engaged, connected, have been to Israel, have either family there, friends there, have had real tactile experience, have been there and have formed their opinions based on a lot of experiential things that have happened and that have impacted them, versus a mass and mob of people who are reading headlines, watching TikTok, watching smear articles, listening to, succumbing to a whole smear campaign. And it's all sort of in the abstract. It's not a personal experience for them or something that they know in terms of sources of people on the ground of what's actually going on. So we're sort of always talking cross purposes against a mass mob of people that's believing, what I would say is propaganda and secondhand sources, and largely press that's compromised, especially from inside Gaza, where you're censored, where you're coming out of the Hamas run Gaza Health Ministry. So when you actually go there, you realize, wow, a lot of that Israel hate out there and a lot of anti-Semitic hate is noise. It's not grounded in any sort of reality. And when real historic moments happen, whether it's the attack on Iran, like things of actual consequence, you realize, wow, none of those people have any idea what's going on. They're all just talking heads. Even the 12-day war, when you're there and, I've spoken to people who were there throughout that process, and you see what's going on. And the only thing that truly matters is survival. And do you have the military advantage to defeat the enemy? And then you see people on Twitter making noise. It all just becomes static. Once you're there on the ground and Trump arrives and all these people in MAGA talking about how Israel is compromising America and dragging America into all these things, and there's all this hostility and tension, and Trump is met with a hero's welcome by the most left-wing Israelis. They have their divisions about Bibi, and it's very contentious about him because he's, their leader. It makes sense. In a democracy, it gets contentious. There's a lot of debate about it. That's what a free country is. But when Trump arrives, oh my God, he gets there and kills for an hour and a half in the Knesset. Wow, I think we're doing great. We brought him home. We did a great job. Bibi, come on, let him go. Pardon him. It's a little champagne. And he's killing it for an hour. They think it's a personality problem with me. I think it's working. Don't you think it's working? Brandon, I think it's working. Officer Tatum, we're doing great. But they are applauding him. There's signs all over Israel saying, thank you, Mr. President. And so you just get a very different experience that's not replicable online. It's not something that's reflected in the internet space. And you see Israel and you see Israelis, you see Israeli Arabs, you see the Jews in Israel, you see people living, and you kind of get inspired and remember it sort of grounds you in a reality that I think we kind of forget is the reality when you spend so much time online. You know?
No, yeah, 1,000%, man. I've been there to Israel, and I was actually shocked that October 7th happened. You know, I wasn't shocked because we couldn't go near the West Bank. I mean, not the West Bank. We couldn't go near the Gaza Strip because it was too dangerous on our tour. But we went all over Israel. You know, we even went to places in the West Bank because there's obviously Christian historical sites there. And you get a chance to see how people live over there, man. And then you get to see all the Arabs that live in Israel and some of the people that's driving up from Gaza that's coming into Israel to work. And you get to see the full picture. And it's not what people think it is. I mean, they in the way they treat Christians there, you know, they held on to the one thing that I said in that interview about the little kid being a little nut job, spitting at the pastor's feet. He may have spit on his shoe or something. And they held on to that, like, oh, they spit on the Christians. It's like, well, to be honest, the pastor had been there 50 or 60 times to Israel, never had an experience like that. This little kid did it, but then an adult pretty much chastised him when he did it and said, that's not the way we act here, or whatever it can be. And people play the full context of the clip, but then they leave that part out as if it don't count. And I know a lot of people that live in Israel, a lot of people that visit Israel often, and it's just not what people think it is. And so the conflict then brings up another topic here, and it is the conflict in our own country. Like, I see there being a contentious battle on the right. The left has always been loony. They will jump off a cliff for anything that's against what Republicans feel like is of interest. But now we see it on the right, man. Like, on the conservative side, we see people who are just out of their minds, and then we see people who are being reasonable. You know, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think it's going to get any better, or do you think we're going to continue to see this until it just get unbearable?
Yeah, I do think that a lot of in the pro-Israel space and in the Jewish community, I think a lot of progressive Zionist Jews and Jews left of center were surprised to see what happened after October 7th across campuses and on the left, demonizing Israel, blaming Israel, and realized, oh, we don't have the allies we thought we did. That didn't surprise me at all, because to me, there is this anti-Western bent on the left, this idea that, blaming and attributing the cause of this conflict to those that have the power and prosperity, they must be to blame. Like we were talking about earlier, I think there's confusion that happens when we see a conflict. Whoever has more, is more prosperous, whichever society is morally superior, must be the one to blame for the ills, for the problems in that side, must be the one responsible, must be the only one with agency. And that's a confusion that happens both on the far left. It happens in sort of libertarian isolationist circles, that it's only the West, it's only the ones with the power and prosperity that must mean they're evil, that must mean they're responsible for evil in the world. It's not the agency of those people. But it did surprise me on the right. It does surprise me today to see this hostility to Israel, given that the right is supposed to be pro-military, pro-Western, pro-freedom, pro a lot of these values that Israel shares with the United States in terms of being generally pro-Western. And I've been trying to figure out and diagnose it. And I think one of the things I heard interestingly that was being talked about, I think it was on Trigonometry with Constantine and Dinesh D'Souza were talking about this. But after Trump 2024 and that victory of sort of the woke left bubble bursting, you started to see this loss of orientation, where if you have problems in your life and you're still struggling, you're still trying to find purpose and meaning and orientation, and for a while you just blamed the left or Biden or Harris or all these factors in society. Once that's gone now, you're left to face yourself. And when people have problems and there's a choice between blaming themselves and blaming others, too often people seldom blame themselves, and they still look for those scapegoats. They still look for those causes for why they're not where they want to be. And they can also use that for self-aggrandizement and to build audiences off of. And nothing makes a better scapegoat than trying to blame this thing that's happening that's beyond our control. It's just like the left did. It was the patriarchy, white privilege, white supremacy. These were these things that we cannot fix. They're irredeemable, and therefore you never have to take responsibility for your own life. You can just blame those systems. And these people on the right are doing the same thing, except it's with explicit anti-Semitism. So we can blame the Jews. Oh yeah, we're pro-capitalist, we're pro-markets, but the Jews manipulate all those things. So those things are compromised now. Yeah, we're pro-American, but the Jews now control America and we need to free America from it. The truth is you're part of the same grievance culture, victim culture, blaming others for your problems. And you're not basing it in rationality. You're basing it in this sort of identitarian tribalism. Exactly the same game the woke left played. You're just now playing it on the right, saying, I want to be part of the marginalized victim class too, as this disgruntled white Christian nationalist that doesn't have my say at the victimhood table. And you just want to join that rather than, I think, standing on principle and taking accountability, the true conservative position, which is your own accountability for your own life and your own responsibility. Jordan Peterson warned about this for years, that if the left pushed so hard on this, the right would respond. And you're seeing it, and it's really, really ugly. So I'm hoping we can come out of it and stand on principle, because it's the same thing to me as a parallel as the left-wing tactics of grievance culture, victimhood, tribalism, collectivism.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy for me to see, man, because, you know, you have people blatantly, and we, for years, we've been stunt supporters of Donald Trump. We've been dying to have him back in the office. Now he's back. We've been dying to have a Congress of people that believe in the American dream. We've been dying to have people in the cabinet, and we got all that. FBI director that we were just crying to have, and we get all that. And because of one situation, I think people leverage that to go full crazy. Because of the Jeffrey Epstein thing. And let me tell you this, I don't really know if the Jeffrey Epstein thing in and of itself was the catalyst. I think it was some of these anti-Semites decide to exploit that situation to then say, here's another example of why all the Jews are bad. Because essentially, a lot of these people are blaming Donald Trump for treason, but they're not brave enough, they're too cowardice to actually say it. Because if he's actually being controlled by a foreign government and his interests are in another government over the United States of America, that is treason. But they won't say that. They just capitulate and beat around the bush about, well, they're running our country and we're being controlled and the government is doing bad and people can't eat food today because we're giving too much money to foreign government. But the people who are in charge are Donald Trump. And so it really bothers me. But do you think there could be a pathway to unity? Because I know Matt Walsh, which I'm not really a big fan of Matt Walsh, but I do respect what he does. But he tried to come out and say we need unity. There's a part of me that thinks there is no unity. There is no more left and right. There's right and wrong. Like, because they're cut from the same cloth on the right that are doing the same thing that we see them do on the left.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting parallel to exactly what happened on the Democratic side of things, where with victory, with increasing victory in the culture, if you look back, there were so many victories for the left in terms of cultural victories. Gay marriage, Obama getting elected, gay marriage, all these things that sort of push the needle more in favor of that direction. But what did they do with the victory? If you look at it, they just kept going and kept going and kept going until eventually things became so fringe and extreme that the worst ideas of the left began to be embraced. Not the ones that we could all sort of compromise and agree upon and unify around in a tolerant society, in a Western society, but to keep pushing to this, to say, now we're going to debate basic biological reality and you have to accept it or you're hateful. Now you can't think for yourself. You can't even address certain topics, or even to talk about certain topics means you're racist, or by nature of your skin color and your whiteness, you are not allowed to speak on certain things. They pushed so hard that it eventually imploded. On the right, I see it going the same way, where in victory for the conservatives, in a post-Trump victory of 2024, what do you do with that victory? Do you now acknowledge it, have gratitude, and take personal responsibility? Or do you keep pushing to say, well, I have to keeping my audience thinking that there's a boogeyman, thinking that there's a fight to be had? There's been so many victories, and instead of appreciating that, they just keep pushing and pushing into these extreme fringe territory that is not tolerable, beyond the Overton window, that's out of bounds, I think, for decent common sense people. And that's going to cause the right to implode. I don't think you can unify with those who seek to divide you. That's a contradiction in terms. I like unity, but I don't like unity on because of relationships with certain people. You have to unify around common ideas and values. That's what unity is about, that we can all agree on certain common things. But you can't, if those ideas are completely contradictory, then you can't unify with them. They're incompatible. So actual anti-Semitism, actual racism, becoming the very caricature the left called the right for years, is a recipe not for victory, but for disaster, for failure. Because if you unify with those people, then the accusations from the AOCs of the world that called you false claims of racism for years suddenly become true. Why would you hand it to them on a silver platter? I think you make yourself distinct from what the left did by drawing those lines and saying that on principle is what we stand, not on blind allegiance to people or a tribe or a team, but on principle. That's what makes conservatives conservatives. And I think that's the kind of thing you need to unify around, not try to seek to unify with those who have bad intentions, nefarious intentions that seek to divide you. That's how you lose, not win.
I've often wondered, how much of it is spiritual. I know there's a spiritual component to it, but it's very interesting because we could run away with this victory like a runaway train. I mean, we could have J.D. Vance get the next 2 terms, and we'll have a Republican in office for 3 terms in a row. And I think the left will probably never regain structure. But what's happening is that people on the right are aligning with people on the left. They're aligning with complaining about America, complaining about the fact that people can't eat and we don't have enough resources and all this. And they're buying into the victim narrative from the left, and therefore it's going to just take somebody like Gavin Newsom to come out and capitulate to all the victim narratives. And then what's going to happen? Because they got to hate J.D. Vance if he support Israel. They have to hate J.D. Vance. So there's going to be a contingency of people saying, well, J.D. Vance isn't good enough for us. And then they're going to push people to go vote for a Democrat. And then we're going to have the cycle all over again. The Democrat going to do their thing. They're going to get victories, and they're going to be evil again. And they're going to start pushing things that's intolerable. And then the right is going to get power again. It's like, I just wish that people on the right will get their heads out of their butts when it comes to this Israel thing. I just think that's the crux of everything. I mean, I don't even think it has anything else to do with nothing else but Jew hatred. And what happens with Jew hatred is that people who are incredibly influential creates this Jew hatred in the minds of unsuspecting people that are not researching and not looking at anything. They just believe these talents and personalities, and they go, if this person said it, it must be right. And it's just this rise of anti-Semitism. I used to think anti-Semitism wasn't real. I mean, like, it wasn't a legitimate, it's like racism. Everybody's racist if you don't like them. Then I'm starting to really see, like, wait a minute, that's what that is.
Yeah, and it's exactly what happened. The left had the same end-all be-all answer for all of the world's problems and all of your problems, and it was racism, white privilege, white supremacy. These are causing all the problems, and you can't fix it. And the right is saying, in a lot of ways, Israel, AIPAC, anti-Semitism, Israel, AIPAC, the Jews, using these old tropes to say, you are not responsible for your failures or your successes. You can't get out of it. There's this other powerful interests controlling us, and they're dog whistling to all of that. Now, what does that do? This is a left-wing tactic to shift responsibility from yourself, from your community, from your family, to put it on others and blame others for your problems. That's a left-wing tactic that people on the right are calling to unify with. I don't think so. I say you have to draw the clear lines to demonstrate what a right-wing victory looks like. And if it looks like this kind of squabbling and infighting over what? The only democracy in the Middle East, the only true ally that America has, that has shared values with the United States, that's what we're going to break the brain of the right over? It's insane. And yes, the AOCs, the Gavin Newsoms are just going to walk right in and say, told you so, and they won't be wrong. Now, how tragic would that be? What a waste. What a wasted opportunity to actually get some constructive things done. And props to Trump for going to Israel and saying, I don't care what anybody says. I love Israel. I do. I love Israel. So he's kind of holding the line there and saying, I love Israel. Great country. You guys are so great, because he's a no-nonsense person in that regard. So I think he is pushing back on those elements. But for whatever reason, I think there's an element of wanting to tear it all down, just like the left wants to do, wanting to create confusion and demoralize people. That's what the left wants to do. It's these same elements. They're the same to me. And I think it behooves us to make reasonable arguments and not shame those who may be susceptible to these bad arguments, to say that in their ignorance doesn't mean they're evil and bad. And if they have questions, it should not be met with condemnation. And I also don't think it's a good idea to tell people who they can and can't be friends with privately. That doesn't mean you can't scrutinize and criticize bad ideas and views publicly. Everybody's got crazy friends. We've all been at meals or lunch with people who say crazy things. But if they were out there publicly doing it in a certain way, I wouldn't necessarily have to condemn them in the totality of that person, but I can say these views are really, really bad and really harmful. Here's why. And I think there's some tactics that can be employed on all sides to help that conversation become a little more constructive and productive without making demands, but engaging in the way I think you and I are doing, where we're trying to, appeal to people's common sense and common values and principles. You don't have to sever ties with everyone completely. To publicly disavow a person is different than to publicly criticize a viewpoint. And I think those are the kind of ways in which we can kind of help get out of this, because I know a lot, if you've put in 12 years with somebody and you've built movements and you've done things, I can understand why it's hard to, when you know people, when someone knows someone personally, whoever those people may be, we're reacting to avatars of people, and if Megan knows Tucker personally and has had dinner with him, yes, she might know a person that we don't know. She might know this person who isn't privately have any problem with Jews or anything like that, but it gives her a blind spot, unfortunately, to this public posturing and this behavior that's happening for all of us and for all of the masses of people watching. They have a very different reaction and are being impacted very negatively towards things he's doing that you might be able to see through, but you think you're seeing through it. We think you're blind spotting to it. You know what I mean? You're have blinders on because you know a person we don't know. Fair enough. So you can keep that person in your life, but these views need to be called out and confronted. And this kind of behavior needs to be, I think, addressed.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's a big difference between someone having private friendships but calling out the issues versus a person having private conversation and not calling out the issues. Like, that's the only thing that, and I love Megyn Kelly, but when she would say, "I'm not going to come out against Candace," I get it. Me and Candace are really good friends. I'm not going to blast Candace online openly. I'm going to challenge the ideas, but she won't even challenge the ideas. Right. That's the thing that Megan bothers me, because like Tucker, I don't know him whatsoever, and I don't like him at all. I don't know him as a person.
Well, I love you. I love you. I'm just kidding. I hate you. What does like mean? I don't know what like means. What does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. But anyway,
that guy is he's very interesting, because this is my whole fault with a lot of these people is that I feel like they know better, but they do it anyway. I cannot imagine somebody with the amount of intelligence that they either claim to have or they previously had.
Yeah.
And they will go down a rabbit hole of saying things that's not even remotely true, that's verifiably false. Like, for instance, like Thomas Massey, in Congress in America, I think he's a congressman. Well, he goes, and it's not, I never said anything bad about Thomas Massey, because I know he has this thing about Jews. Who cares? Like, I don't care. I'm not Israeli. So and like every battle I got to fight. But then it's when he posts this, he went online on Twitter and he posts that debt per person in America is 113,000, which is, I don't know where you got that number from, because if you look at the national debt and you look at the population, it's really more of 111,000. But anyway, he got this number up here, and then he go, debt per person in Israel is 37,000. Then he go, Israel publicly funds abortions. Why do we send them money? Now, I wouldn't be upset with this if he also mentioned all the other places that we fund, all the other governments that are lobbying our government and doing all this stuff. If he mentioned them, I would shut the front door. But this guy mentions debt when America's debt is way beyond funding to Israel. Like $38 trillion in debt. We give Israel $3.8 billion a year for military funding that they have to spend exclusively with American military equipment. And I did a little math for him, because he's disingenuous at best. What I got when I did the math was that if you divide the debt to every American, that's babies and everything else, I guess if people want to do it that way, then it's $111,000, 753. $111,753 is what it comes out to, without funding Israel. Funding Israel, literally the debt goes up by $11. So are you really making your whole bet and pushing your platform to say we shouldn't give money to Israel because that increased America's debt by $11. That is literally like one latte less a year for an American, or over the lifetime of the debt is one latte less at Starbucks. Like, but the ramifications for isolationism and defunding Israel is way more consequential than American debt being $11. Like, if somehow we say we won't fund Israel and the extremist radical Islamic terrorists take over Israel, they're going to get all the equipment that we've been giving them. They're going to have all the technology. They're going to rape and pillage and kill as many people as they can. A lot of the refugees from Israel are going to have to come to America because that's one of the only places they will be allowed with safety and security. And then we're going to end up fighting a battle with them at some point in the future that's going to cost more than $3.8 billion a year. I do not understand the logic. And it's not that Massey said it. It's, why are you saying this? Why does Marjorie Taylor Greene not tell the totality of funding when they claim that we're giving so much money to Israel?
There's also the $7,000 payments that need to be, funded by
factor that in
for all of us and all of our amazing posts after post after post. I just keep doing it, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. But it's always been this issue of this weird thing where it's not, Israel meddling in the United States, as that accusation is constantly thrown at Israel. It's all of these people obsessing with Israel. They're the ones obsessing and scrutinizing over every little thing Israel does to prosecute a war that they don't do with any other country, even when America is involved in those too. It's just not the same. So it's a funny, weird sort of admission and a projection where they're saying how Israel's meddling and entangling into U.S. affairs, but it's really them who are meddling and obsessing over everything Israel is doing when it's a country the size of New Jersey. And what they mean to suggest is that it has that much power, this little country the size of New Jersey, with the Knesset, with its government, the parliament that Trump visited. That's what Israel is, the size of New Jersey, facing existential threats that no other country faces. They're the ones dragging the world's biggest economy, biggest military, strongest country around. That's what's the impression? The tail that wags the dog or something. I mean, that's their contention. That's what they're saying. It's kind of ridiculous, and it provides this ultimate scapegoat for them not to actually face the issues they have to address. I mean, if you can always point at that, there are so many other things the U.S. spends money on, wastes money on, so many things we all could agree need to be cut, rather than focusing on the contentious ones we disagree. And there's so many things you could get in line on and say, let's all agree that these and these and these and these are wasteful. One can argue about foreign aid as a technical discussion over what's practical, what makes sense. I can understand those arguments, and not all of them in theory come from a hateful place. But the obsession over this one, the funding of Israel through military credits that they have to spend in the United States to fight enemies that America also shares, to gather intelligence that protect American interests. I mean, look, we have that position, so I get it. And you can argue over that. There are people who are very Zionist, pro-Israel, who are also not into foreign aid because it can compromise, Israel's ability to be fully autonomous and exercise its military the way it sees fit. I mean, there's frustrations that come with that. There are costs to Israel for accepting foreign aid. I'll give you an example. Like, even when Biden was president and Israel had to evacuate like hundreds of thousands of people in the north, they had to evacuate people while Hezbollah was raining down rockets. I asked a friend of mine who's a soldier in an elite unit, like, I don't get it. Why is Israel tolerating rocket fire every single day in their northern communities and keeping people evacuated from their schools, from their neighborhoods, from their lives? And he said, why do you think? It's because there's 3 aircraft carrier in the vicinity of Israel that have to approve every Israeli strike. And according to him, the Biden administration did not want escalation in the north of Hezbollah, so they did not approve of Israeli counterstrikes to deal with that threat, even though they could have. Now, take that for what it is. That was his position on it, his opinion. But it just gives you a sense that it's Israel that often has to, most of the time, answer to what America demands, because America is the largest economy, the strongest military. They are calling the shots, not the other way around. Just use logic and common sense and you come to that. But when these people point to boogeyman, it's just this low-hanging fruit, low-resolution thinking. And oftentimes these people do that. You realize they're operating from, their arguments are 1 or 2 layers deep, and that's it. And it's all very cinematic way of looking at the politics, that, behind the scenes is this these players in suits who are secretly having these documents that they're not telling you what's really going on, but really those people perpetuating those narratives are the ones, I think, being fooled and, painting a fiction,
Yeah, I mean, like, if they did this with every other country, I probably wouldn't even bat an eye. I wouldn't know. But it's like, why is it always Israel? Why we give money to Jordan and Egypt as well, and we give money to all kind of other countries. Qatar spends billions of dollars at our universities. We got Saudi Arabia spends crazy money in America. China spends crazy amount of money in America. I mean, China used to own TikTok. I mean, which the government can't even have on their phones because they're worried about them spying on them. Nancy Pelosi, I think Nancy Pelosi, one of these riding around with a Chinese spy. Like there's so much more questionable things that happen outside of the country with relationships with other countries, and they don't even mention it or bring it up whatsoever. I mean, the whole lobby thing, like AIPAC will never be registered as FAR because it's American citizens. Now, if you don't want American citizens to be able to lobby on behalf of the interest between America and another country, then just say that. But to say it should be FAR registered, let's just say that they were. Let's register them in FAR. They were still pale in comparison to all the other FAR registered lobby groups from all over the world that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in lobbying in America. Like, that's the part that gets me, man. It's like, if you guys don't like government spending in foreign countries, then on your tweet, just put a list of all the countries. Why do they never put any other country but Israel? I just don't understand.
There's something about AIPAC that's a little bit different than China. And I think, a lot of it stems from, I hate to say it, and I hate to throw anti-Semitism out where it doesn't apply, but by process of elimination, the most rational explanation has to be that. Because, listen, you have a people that's small, that's been vulnerable throughout history, that throughout every challenge, throughout every attempt to annihilate it, the people has persevered. And there's two reactions to that. People can look at the Jewish people with admiration for resilience, for being able to create cohesion in their communities, sticking together, having family values, focusing on education. These are the things that are kind of tried and true in terms of survival. And then there's other people, the other reaction to that is resentment, envy, hatred. And if you can't look at yourself to fix yourself, and other people are able to, and dispel that, despite the challenges and systemic issues within a society, you can still succeed. If you're not doing that yourself, it's pretty easy to just hate those who are able to. And that's what you see. And I think you see that specifically, disproportionately with Jews, this attempt of Jewish erasure, this obsession with scapegoating. And it comes from socioeconomic things. It comes from religious places. There are theological, like you said, there are spiritual components to it. I kind of, going back thousands of years since the beginning, it's Joseph and his brothers, it's Cain and Abel. One sacrifice is accepted, one is rejected. And what happens? Someone gets killed, and then violence ensues. So they threw Joseph into the pit. Remember, there's just this thing. It traces all the way back to the beginning. That's what I think. You're totally right. It's hard to deny the spiritual component here of instead of looking inward at oneself, you can simply point, and it's just an easier fix to do that, or weird. Easier excuse.
It's weird to me, man. I maybe I'm naive. I've never thought about Jews being any of this stuff that they're saying. Like, when I walk around my everyday life, I don't think a Jew is behind the demise of my community, or like when pornography in America is a rampant, demonic thing. I don't think to myself like it's because of the Jews. No, it's because of the people that watch it and participate in it. Like you can blame the Jews all you want if they own it, but you're the one watching it, or you the one uploading the content. What are we saying here? Jews run the rap music. Well, y'all are the ones consuming it. Yeah, y'all the ones consuming. They people are the ones consuming it. Like, to be honest, people don't know who own it. They love it. They live it. That gangster rap, that drill music. Like, when I was growing up, I embodied that. Why do people think that maybe a Jew is smart enough to be like, if they dumb enough to listen to it, I'll make some money off of it? Why couldn't it be the agents and all that? It's like, no, you guys are making millions of dollars and you hired this guy. You can hire another guy if you want to, but you guys are participating in this.
It's the same argument when they say, Bibi allowed money from Qatar to get to Hamas, right? So he is responsible. I'm like, yeah, that could have happened. But Hamas could have also not done that, right? They could have taken that money and built schools, roads, infrastructure, prosperity. In other words, I guarantee you, if Bibi prevented funds from going to Hamas, you'd have Dave Smiths and people of the world, critics of Israel, saying Israel prevented money from going into Gaza, and that's why Gaza failed. You would have that exact argument. So it's unfalsifiable. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. Allowing money to come in from Qatar to Hamas. Okay, what did they do with that money? And if anything, it's very insulting to everybody. It's almost racist to suggest that there's all these people who've been decimated by the Jews. What about their agency? Do they not have capability, ability, agency to make choices? You're stripping them of that. And if you think about it, it's not only anti-Semitic to the Jews you're blaming, it's racist to the people you're not attributing agency to, because there's no way they could have made all those decisions on their own. There's no way. Yeah. They're just subjects to the influence of the powerful Jew. I mean, do you see how that's just a racialized, racist, anti-Semitic framework to look at everything? People don't have control over their decisions. And I think that's pretty insulting to human nature itself. You know, I think also Dennis Prager had a really astute observation about the Jews. You can't say the Jews about anything, because on the one hand, being Jewish can be just simply an ethnic, immutable characteristic. You're born with the Jewish mother. Technically, you're Jewish. But being Jewish is so much more than that. You have the practice of Judaism, the engagement with Jewish values and community. And not every Jew applies themselves and engages with that equally across time. There's Jews on the left. There's also the biggest critics of Jews are the biggest critics of Israel are Jews. The biggest anti-Zionists are Norman Finkelstein, Noam Chomsky, right? Dave Smith, the people who are on the other side of this were, you know, so you can't say the Jews, even the claim, the Jews killed Jesus, right? That the trope of that, right? Judas betrayed Jesus. He was Jewish. You know who else was Jewish? Jesus. You know who else created Jesus? Joseph, Mary. They raised Jesus. You know who created Christianity? The Jews. So what is it? It's a meaningless phrase. What we object to and are calling out is using the term the Jews to collectivize guilt of Jesus's death throughout forever, for all time, to hold the Jews as a people responsible. But it's just such a lapse in logic to collectivize the actions of specific people. And that only really happens most often, especially in today's day and age, with the Jews. So
I love that you said that, man. I mean, it is incredible, bro, that people get silly like that. They kill me on X for saying that. I'm like, last time I checked, our faith, Christian faith, was started by Jews in Israel. Like what are we saying? Peter was a Jew. All of them were Jews. All of his
Peter was Palestinian.
Yeah.
Peter was Palestinian. I think they called him Peter the Palestinian in one of the Gospels. You can correct me. You're Christian. It was Peter the Palestinian, and the Romans were white settler colonials, and the Jews were part of that. Yeah, exactly. So
exactly what they do. And it's like, we don't even have to fight, right? If people just shut the front door and use equivalent logic, then we could say we're all in this thing together. You know, like the new trope is we're not Judeo-Christian. And I kind of fell for it for a little bit, like, we're just Christian. But then I'm like, when you look at what Judeo-Christian mean, it just really means the Bible. That means that the original, the Old Testament of the scripture was all, I mean, everything was Jewish people and Judaism. I mean, all of it, the promises, the prophets, everything that led to Jesus was all through Judaism. No other faith, no other people. It was the Jews and Judaism. They were blessed. They were serving God. God decided to give the word through Moses. And I mean, you go all the way down. Even Jesus was born. He was a Jew. His mother Mary, that the Catholics hold to a very high esteem, she was a Jew. I don't know if they forgot about that. I mean, 90+% of the people that wrote in the Bible were all Jews. I mean, it's almost like a Jewish book written by Jewish people about the Jewish God. And, you know, now it phased into Christianity, but it's like, that's why we say Judeo-Christian, because Christianity is kind of like a newer form of Judaism, I guess you could say, because Jesus kind of led that movement. But, you know, I don't know, man.
You know, I think it's not just some buzzword. You know, I think it is a very important alliance around the common values of the West, Athens and Jerusalem, rational minds and reason, and the spiritual foundations of the West that are sacred, that need to be protected. And Christianity itself, I mean, spread much further and farther than Judaism did. And I think the world was better for it in that regard, in that it spread the idea of the sanctity of the individual. And that was rooted in Judaism. You can even trace it back to one of the early stories of the Bible, which was the sacrifice of Isaac, was God's lesson to say children are not your property. In other words, that was considered standard at the time, that as a ritual practice and religious practice in pagan religions, child sacrifice to gods was considered common. And that's how you expressed your highest form to a deity. And what God is saying in that story, one of the lessons of that story, is to take Abraham to that moment of ultimate expression of commitment to God and say, no, every human being is sacred in the image of God. You do not own your children. They are not property. And these ideas through Judaism were spread, and then largely through Christianity into the West were spread much, much further, liberating, I think, a lot of the worst ideas of history and the worst common practices of history. And there is an alliance that I think needs to be remembered and protected, that it is not mutually exclusive, that one does not replace the other, that these two coexist, and they're very important. And to recognize Christianity's roots in Judaism and not its contest with it, not its combat with it. These two are an important alliance that protects, I think, the guardrails of Western civilization itself. And I think we have common enemies. We know what they are. And that's what unity means to me, is uniting around common values and to fight common enemies, not uniting around common enemies to dispel with common values.
Right. I love that, man. I think that's a good segue into how can people follow you? And do you do stand-up comedy too?
Sure. Yeah. You can follow me, The Gospel According to Ami Kozak. No, it's at Ami Kozak on Instagram, on Twitter. My podcast is called Ami's House. On TikTok as well. All the platforms you can find me on at Ami Kozak, Ami's House Podcast. I have a band called Distant Cousins. If anybody wants to listen to some cool indie folk pop music, you can follow that there. And I perform stand-up all over the place. So clubs, theaters, conferences, the works. So stay tuned and follow me on social media. You can find me there.
And can they find your comedy show appearances at AmiKozak.com?
Yes, on my website, AmiKozak.com, and I post regularly on social media for updates for shows and touring dates and things like that. So
that's cool, man. I gotta check you out, man. I'm probably your biggest fan at the front.
I appreciate
you coming on, brother. Anytime, man. God bless you, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, you too. God bless.